I used to go on family road trips all the time as a kid, and me and my younger brother Jason have many fond memories. In addition to the destination, many of those memories involved hotels, specifically the pool rooms, exercise rooms, and vending machines. We'd splash around until closing time, pretend the treadmills were spaceships, and stuff our faces with candy bars and chips from those glowing machines in the hallways. But there was one trip, back when I was about 12 and Jason was 9, that turned those innocent hotel stays into something I'll never forget. It was the summer of 2005, and we were driving from Ohio to Florida for a beach vacation. Dad decided to push through the night to make better time, but around 2 a.m. in some nowhere town in Georgia, Mom insisted we stop. The only place with a vacancy sign flickering was this rundown motel called the Whispering Pines Inn. It looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. It had peeling green paint and a neon sign missing half the letters. We pulled in, exhausted, and the front desk clerk was this older guy with a lazy eye and a name tag that just said manager. He handed over the keys to room 112 without much talk, muttering something about the pool being closed for maintenance. Jason and I were bummed as that meant no late night swim, but we perked up when we spotted the vending machines down the hall from our room. After unpacking, while Mom and Dad settled in, we begged for quarters and headed out. The hallway was dimly lit, with that musty carpet smell mixed with faint cigarette smoke. The machines hummed softly, stocked with the usual junk, sodas, candy, and even those little packs of peanuts. Jason got a Snickers and I grabbed some M&Ms, and we were about to head back when we heard it. There was a soft scraping sound, like nails on wood, coming from behind the machines. At first we thought it was a rat or something, common in old places like that. Jason, being the brave little idiot he was, peeked around the side. "Hey, there's a door back here," he whispered. Sure enough, partially hidden by the vending machines was a narrow metal door, painted the same beige as the wall, with a small grate at the bottom. There was no sign or anything, just a handle. Curiosity got the better of us. We were kids after all, so I tried to turn it. Oddly enough, it was unlocked, and it creaked open to reveal a steep set of concrete stairs leading down into darkness. A faint earthy smell wafted up, like wet dirt and rust. "This must be the basement," I said, trying to sound cool. Jason wanted to go down, but I chickened out and pulled him back, shutting the door quietly. We didn't tell our parents, as we didn't want to get in trouble for snooping. That night, I couldn't sleep though. The room's air conditioner rattled like it was about to die. Jason was out cold next to me in the double bed. Then around 3 a.m., I heard that scraping again, but this time it sounded closer, like it was coming from under the floor. I sat up, heart pounding, and pressed my ear to the carpet. There were muffled voices, whispers really, drifting up from below. I couldn't make out words, but it sounded like 2 or 3 people arguing in low tones. Then a thump, like something heavy being dropped. I woke Jason and we both listened, wide-eyed. "Maybe it's the manager fixing stuff," he suggested, but his voice shook. We tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but an hour later there was a knock at our door. Dad grumbled and answered it. It turned out to be the manager, apologizing for the noise from renovations. He said they were working on the boiler room downstairs overnight to avoid bothering guests during the day. Dad bought it, but I noticed the manager's hands were dirty, streaked with what looked like mud. The next morning, we packed up early to hit the road. As we were loading the car, Jason ran back inside to grab his forgotten Game Boy from the room. He was gone longer than he should have been, and when he came back, his face was pale. "I saw something," he whispered to me in the back seat as we drove off. He'd wandered near the vending machines again and noticed the hidden door was ajar. Peeking down the stairs, he saw flashlights bobbing in the dark and what looked like people digging. There were shovels hitting dirt and piles of earth being moved. And then, one of them looked up, straight at him, with eyes that reflected the light like an animal's. Jason bolted without being seen, or at least he thought so. We laughed it off as his imagination at first, but later that week, on the drive home, we heard a news report on the radio about the Whispering Pines Inn. It turns out, police had raided the place after an anonymous tip. The basement wasn't for storage or boilers. It was an old storm cellar they'd converted into a hidden bunker for smuggling. It wasn't drugs or guns, but people. I don't want to go into all the specifics, but people were held there against their will and forced to dig tunnels under the property to expand the operation. The manager was the ringleader, and those renovations were them burying evidence when things got hot. A few bodies were found down there too, people who tried to escape apparently. If Jason hadn't run when he did, or if we'd gone down those stairs, well, let's just say our family road trip stopped after that. And now, every time I see a vending machine in a hotel hallway, I wonder what's really behind it. When I was 5, my parents and I stayed in this huge hotel during a family vacation. In retrospect, I'm not sure how big it was really. Maybe it only had like 3 or 4 floors. But to a little kid who hadn't stayed in a hotel of that size before, it seemed unimaginably large. The place was called something like Grand Vista Resort, and it was tucked away in the mountains of Colorado, with long echoing hallways carpeted in faded red patterns and elevators that dinged like old church bells. We were there for a week in the summer of 1998, my dad attending some work conference, while Mom and I splashed in the indoor pool and hiked the nearby trails. Our room was 312 at the end of a quiet wing with 2 queen beds, a clunky TV, and a view of pine trees swaying in the wind. I remember feeling like a tiny explorer in a castle, running my hands along the wallpapered walls that felt bumpy under my fingers. The first couple of nights were fine. They were normal, even fun. I'd fall asleep to the hum of the air conditioning unit under the window, dreaming of adventures. But on the 3rd night, I woke up thirsty around midnight. The room was pitch black except for the green glow of the alarm clock. As I sat up to reach for my water cup on the nightstand, I heard it, a soft rustling, like paper being crumpled. It seemed to be coming from inside the wall behind my bed. I froze, thinking it was a mouse or maybe the wind, but then it happened again, closer this time, followed by a faint click, like a latch popping open. My heart started thumping as I stared at the wall. There was a vent there, high up near the ceiling, but it looked normal, metal slats covered in dust. I whispered for my mom, but she and Dad were dead asleep across the room. The noise eventually stopped, so I convinced myself it was nothing and burrowed back under the covers. The next morning, I told my parents about it over breakfast in the hotel diner. Dad laughed it off as old buildings settling, while Mom said hotels like this had all sorts of pipes and ducts that made weird sounds. But later that day, while they were at a conference session, I got bored in the room and started poking around. I dragged a chair over to the wall and climbed up to peer into that vent. It was dark inside, but I could make out what looked like insulation fluff and something shiny. It looked like a piece of foil or wrapper. I didn't think much of it then, but that night the noises came back, rustling, then a low scrape, like nails dragging across wood. This time, I didn't wake my parents for whatever reason. Instead, I just tiptoed over and pressed my ear to the wall. There was breathing, heavy, uneven breaths, like someone trying to stay quiet. I backed away terrified and hid under the blankets until morning. By the 4th night, I couldn't take it anymore. My parents had gone down to the lobby bar for a drink, leaving me with cartoons on TV and strict orders not to leave the room. The noises started earlier this time, around 9 p.m. Rustling, scraping, and then breathing. Gathering every bit of 5-year-old courage I had, I grabbed the TV remote like a weapon and climbed the chair again. Shining my little keychain flashlight into the vent, I begged Dad for it earlier that day. I saw movement. Then a finger, pale and dirty, poked through the slats, wiggling as if testing the air. Then an eye appeared, staring right back at me, bloodshot and unblinking. I screamed and fell off the chair, crashing to the floor. My parents burst in minutes later, alerted by the front desk after another guest apparently heard my scream. They found me hysterical, pointing at the vent. Dad called maintenance, and a grumpy hotel worker showed up with tools. He unscrewed the vent cover, mumbling about kids imagining things. But when it came off, we all saw it. A narrow crawl space behind the wall, stuffed with candy wrappers, empty water bottles, and a tattered sleeping bag. The worker went pale and radioed for security. Turns out, the hotel's walls had these old maintenance shafts from when it was built in the 60s, mostly forgotten and unsealed. Someone, a drifter who'd been fired from the staff months earlier, had been squatting in there, moving between rooms via the network of ducts. He'd even been watching guests through vents and peepholes, stealing small items like jewelry or cash when rooms were empty. But in our case, the police later said he'd been getting bolder, leaving notes in his hideout about the little one in 312. If I hadn't screamed when I did, who knows what might have happened that night. The hotel shut down that wing for renovations, and we checked out early. But even now, as an adult, I can't stay in a hotel without checking every vent and wall for hidden spaces. You never know if someone else could be sharing the room with you. I dated this girl Julia in college, and one time she and I went on this road trip during a week we both had off from work and school. To be honest, we were already drifting apart then, and maybe we both thought this could help bring us back together. It was early fall 2012, and we'd mapped out a route from Boston down to Charleston, stopping at little towns along the way. But by the 3rd night, we were bickering over stupid stuff, like whose turn it was to drive or why she kept changing the radio station. We pulled into Richmond around midnight, exhausted, and the only place with rooms available was this mid-rise hotel called the Eclipse Tower, about 8 floors tall. At least it had a sleek glass facade that reflected the city lights. It wasn't fancy, but it had that anonymous chain vibe, sterile lobby, buzzing fluorescents, and a night clerk who barely looked up from his phone as he handed us keycards for room 614. We took the elevator up, smooth and silent, with mirrored walls that made the space feel bigger than it was. Julia leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and for a moment it felt like old times. Our room was pretty standard, king bed, mini fridge humming in the corner, and a window overlooking the parking lot. We crashed hard that night, but I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of water running. It wasn't from our bathroom, instead it was from above, like someone showering in the room directly overhead. It was steady at first, then sputtering, like a faucet being turned on and off. I glanced at Julia, she was out cold. Figuring it was just a late night guest, I rolled over and tried to sleep. But then came a thump, heavy and deliberate, followed by what sounded like dragging. It was furniture maybe, or something heavier. It went on for what felt like hours though, stopping just before dawn. The next morning, over complimentary coffee in the lobby, I mentioned it to Julia. She shrugged it off as hotel life, but I couldn't shake it. We spent the day exploring Richmond, museums, lunch at a diner, and by evening we were back, deciding to extend our stay one more night to unwind. That afternoon, while Julia took a nap, I wandered the halls out of boredom. The 6th floor was identical to the others, long corridors with numbered doors, ice machines at the ends. But as I passed room 714, right above ours, I heard it again. It was the sound of water running, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't a voice or a TV, just that persistent drip and flow. I knocked lightly, thinking maybe I'd complain about a leak, but no one answered. Shaking my head, I headed to the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. It stopped on the 4th floor, doors opening to reveal an empty hall. As they closed, I swear I saw a shadow flit across the far end, like someone ducking out of sight. That night, the noises escalated. Around 1 a.m., the water started again, but this time accompanied by low gurgles and splashes, like a tub overflowing. Then the dragging, slow, rhythmic, back and forth across the floor. Julia heard it too. She sat up, eyes wide. "What the hell is that?" she whispered. We called the front desk, and the clerk promised to send someone up to check. 15 minutes later, a maintenance guy in overalls knocked on our door. He listened with us and nodded, and said he'd investigate the room above. We waited, but he never came back. The sound stopped abruptly around 2:30 a.m., replaced by an eerie silence. Julia wanted to switch rooms, but the hotel was booked solid, some convention or something. We ended up barricading the door with a chain and tried our best to get to sleep. In the morning, as we packed to leave, curiosity got the better of me. Julia waited in the car while I took the stairs up to the 7th floor. There was no one around, just that same carpeted quiet. Room 714's door was cracked open, like someone had left in a hurry. I pushed it gently, heart racing. I didn't know what I was expecting, but the room was a mirror of ours, but trashed. The bed was unmade and towels were strewn about. And in the bathroom, the tub was full to the brim with murky water, reddish stains around the drain, like rust or something worse. On the mirror, fogged over, was a smudged message, "Stay out." I backed away fast, nearly tripping, and bolted down to the lobby. The day clerk, a different guy, listened to my story with a blank expression. "Room 714? Sir, that's been vacant for weeks, under renovation after a pipe burst. No one's staying there." He pulled up the system to show me, and the computer did say unoccupied. We drove off without answers, but a few days later, back home, I couldn't let it go. I searched online for the Eclipse Tower and found buried forum posts from former guests. Turns out the hotel had a dark secret. Years earlier, a maintenance worker had gone missing, presumed dead after falling into the building's outdated plumbing system during repairs. But rumors persisted. He'd actually been murdered by a colleague over a debt, body disposed of in the wall's piping network, which spanned multiple floors. The renovations were covers for ongoing issues, clogs from decomposition, and strange floods seeping down. Those noises? Apparently they weren't renovations, but instead the system backing up, pushing remnants through the pipes. The hotel hushed it up to avoid lawsuits, but staff knew to ignore complaints. If I'd gone into that bathroom any deeper, or stayed another night, well, let's just say Julia and I broke up soon after. Road trips lost their appeal, and now, in any multi-floor hotel, I always request the ground level. Because you never know what's flowing through the veins of those places.